The grand auditorium of Blackwood University buzzed with the infectious energy of graduation day. Sunlight streamed through the towering arched windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air and casting a golden glow on the sea of black gowns and mortarboards. Proud parents clutched bouquets, siblings fidgeted with anticipation, and the air hummed with the scent of lilies and fresh beginnings. On the impressively decorated stage, rows of faculty in their academic regalia sat with solemn dignity, facing the graduating class. Dean Anya Sharma, a formidable woman whose sharp business suit seemed to command respect, stood at the podium preparing to call the names of the distinguished graduates for the doctoral program, the culmination of years of relentless work and sacrifice. Among them, almost invisible in her simple, unadorned black gown, sat Dr. Lena Hansen. Unlike many of her peers whose gowns hinted at custom tailoring or were accessorized with subtle family heirlooms, Lena's was standard issue, slightly too large. Her mortarboard perched a little precariously on her dark, plainly styled hair, which was pulled back in a low ponytail. Her face, though etched with the fatigue of her recent dissertation defense, held a quiet, intelligent beauty, clear hazel eyes, a thoughtful expression, and a complete absence of makeup. At 32, she clutched her rolled-up diploma scroll, her heart a mixture of profound relief and a quiet, unacknowledged loneliness. Her parents were gone, and her fiancé, Michael, was overseas on an unavoidable business trip, his apologetic texts doing little to fill the void beside her. She was here, at the pinnacle of her academic achievement, utterly alone, a small, unassuming figure in a sea of celebration. Dean Sharma began calling the names, each one met with a burst of applause. Dr. Alistair Finch, Dr. Beatrice Holloway. Lena waited, her hands slightly clammy. Then, Dr. Lena Hansen, Doctor of Philosophy in Theoretical Physics. A polite smattering of applause, much quieter than for the others, rippled through the auditorium. Lena rose, her steps a little unsteady, and made her way towards the center of the stage to receive the ceremonial hooding and handshake. She felt a few curious stares, perhaps wondering who this quiet, uncelebrated graduate was. As she reached the designated spot, Dr. Alistair Finch, who had just been hooded, was lingering, basking in the glow of his family's cheers. He was known for his arrogance as much as his intellect, his gown somehow looking more expensive than everyone else's. He caught sight of Lena approaching, his lip curling almost imperceptibly. He then accidentally bumped into her, a small, deliberate jostle that nearly sent her off balance. "Oh, do watch where you're going, Hansen," he drawled, not bothering to apologize, his tone implying she was in clumsy inconvenience. "Some of us have actual families waiting to celebrate, not just, well, you know." His meaning was clear, a subtle jab at her solitary presence. Lena ignored him, righting herself, her focus on Dean Sharma. Just as Lena reached the center stage, directly in front of Dean Sharma and the rows of esteemed faculty, a commotion erupted near the side stage entrance. Professor Gareth Evans, a notoriously pompous and pedantic member of the physics department, strode onto the stage with an air of urgent self-importance, waving a piece of paper. He was known for his rigid adherence to arcane university bylaws and a distinct lack of empathy. "Stop the proceedings," he boomed, his voice cutting through the polite applause for Lena. "There appears to be an issue." Dean Sharma looked up, her expression hardening with annoyance at the interruption. The audience murmured, confused. Lena paused halfway to the dean, her diploma still clutched in her hand. Professor Evans marched directly towards Lena, ignoring the dean. He held up the paper triumphantly. "Dr. Hansen," he announced, his voice laced with a strange mixture of officiousness and poorly concealed satisfaction, "it has come to my attention that there is an outstanding, albeit minor, library fine on your student account. A sum of $7.50. He paused for dramatic effect. "As per University Regulation, Article 17, subsection C, paragraph 2, no student with outstanding financial obligations, however small, may officially participate in the commencement ceremony or cross the stage." A collective gasp rippled through the auditorium. $7.50. Was he serious? Dean Sharma stepped forward, her face like thunder. Professor Evans, this is hardly the time or place for such trivialities. We can resolve this administratively later. But Professor Evans was resolute, clearly relishing his moment of power. Rules are rules, Dean Sharma, he declared, puffing out his chest. Integrity of process. We cannot make exceptions. Ms. Hanson, he said, deliberately demoting her title, I'm afraid you'll have to step down from the stage immediately. You are not eligible to graduate today with your peers. He gestured dismissively towards the side steps. Alistair Finch, still lingering nearby, smirked openly, clearly enjoying Lena's public humiliation. A few other graduates in the front rows exchanged amused glances. The audience began to whisper, some with disbelief, others with a kind of morbid curiosity. Lena stood frozen, the color draining from her face. After years of relentless work, of sacrificing everything to be denied this moment, to be publicly shamed over a forgotten library fine, was a blow almost too cruel to comprehend. The joy of her achievement evaporated, replaced by a cold, sickening wave of mortification. Tears pricked at Lena's eyes, but she blinked them back fiercely. She would not cry, not here, not in front of these people. She looked at Dean Sharma, who appeared genuinely distressed but also somewhat helpless in the face of Evans's dogmatic insistence. Professor Evans, Lena began, her voice trembling slightly despite her efforts to control it. I was unaware of this fine. I can pay it immediately. I have cash with me. Irrelevant, Professor Evans boomed, cutting her off. The deadline for settling all accounts prior to graduation was last Friday. The rules are explicit, no exceptions. He turned to two campus security guards who had appeared at the edge of the stage, drawn by the commotion. Officers, he commanded, please escort Ms. Hanson from the stage. She is disrupting the ceremony. The guards, looking uncomfortable but obligated to follow a professor's directive in such a public forum, began to move slowly towards Lena. The auditorium was now filled with a cacophony of whispers, camera flashes, and the low murmur of disapproval from some sections of the audience, while others, like Alistair Finch and his clique, seemed to be enjoying the spectacle. Lena felt utterly exposed, her personal moment of triumph twisted into a public spectacle of shame. Her simple gown, her lack of a cheering section, suddenly felt like further evidence of her unworthiness in their eyes. She clutched her diploma scroll tightly, the paper crinkling in her grip. The dream she had worked towards for so long was crumbling into dust before her very eyes, all for the sake of $7.50 and one professor's petty adherence to bureaucracy. She took a small involuntary step backwards as the guards approached, her mind reeling. This couldn't be happening. After everything she had endured, everything she had sacrificed, it couldn't end like this. The heavy oak podium where Dean Sharma stood seemed miles away, a symbol of an achievement now cruelly snatched from her grasp. The sunlight streaming through the windows suddenly felt harsh, accusatory, illuminating her humiliation for all to see. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Just as the first security guard reached out a hesitant hand towards Lena's elbow, the main doors at the back of the vast auditorium burst open with a force that made them bang against the stone walls. The sudden noise caused every head to turn, a wave of surprise rippling through the assembled crowd. Framed in the grand archway, silhouetted against the bright sunlight from the foyer, stood a figure whose presence immediately commanded the attention of the entire room. It was Michael Sterling. Not the Michael Sterling known to the business world, the reclusive, intensely private billionaire CEO of Sterling Global Enterprises, a man whose philanthropic donations to Blackwood University were legendary, but whose face was rarely seen. This was Michael, Lena's fiancé, who was supposed to be thousands of miles away. He wore a perfectly tailored, understated charcoal suit that nonetheless spoke of immense wealth and power, his dark hair impeccably styled, his piercing blue eyes sweeping the auditorium with an intensity that brooked no argument. He wasn't flanked by an entourage, but his solitary presence radiated an aura of absolute command. He moved with a swift, purposeful stride down the central aisle, his expensive leather shoes echoing on the marble floor, a sound that cut through the stunned silence. The audience parted before him as if by an invisible force. Dean Sharma gasped audibly, recognizing him instantly. Professor Evans, mid-sentence in another self-important pronouncement, trailed off, his jaw slackening. Alistair Finch's smirk vanished, replaced by a look of utter confusion and dawning apprehension. Lena, standing on the stage, tears finally beginning to spill down her cheeks, looked up at the commotion, her heart leaping with a mixture of disbelief and a wild, desperate hope. Michael reached the front of the auditorium, his gaze fixed solely on Lena, ignoring everyone else. He didn't ascend the main stairs to the stage. Instead, with a grace that belied his powerful frame, he simply vaulted onto the low edge of the stage in a single fluid movement, landing softly beside her. He gently took her hand, his thumb brushing away a tear from her cheek. "I'm here, Lena," he said softly, his voice, though quiet, carrying an undeniable weight that resonated through the silent hall. "I'm so sorry I'm late." He then turned, his arm protectively around Lena's shoulders, to face the stunned faculty and the bewildered Professor Evans. His blue eyes, moments before warm for Lena, now turned to ice. "Professor Evans, I believe." Michael's voice was deceptively mild, but the underlying steel was unmistakable. "You are attempting to remove Dr. Hanson from this stage, her stage, because of an alleged library fine of $7.50. Professor Evans, momentarily flustered by Michael Sterling's unexpected appearance and direct address, puffed himself up again, attempting to regain his lost authority. "Mr. Sterling, is it? While your presence is unexpected, university regulations are clear. Outstanding financial obligations, however minor—" Michael cut him off, not with a raised voice, but with a look so cold and commanding that Evans visibly flinched. "Regulations?" Michael echoed, his voice dangerously soft. He reached into his inner jacket pocket and withdrew a sleek minimalist checkbook and a gold pen. "Let's talk about financial obligations, Professor." He glanced around the grand auditorium, his gaze sweeping over the ornate carvings, the state-of-the-art sound system, the newly refurbished seating. "This auditorium, I believe it's called Sterling Hall, funded by a rather significant donation from my family foundation some years ago. The new physics research wing opening next semester, that's another substantial Sterling contribution. The endowed chairs in your very department, Professor Evans, several of those bear the Sterling name and are funded by our ongoing commitment to this institution." He paused, letting his words sink in. The silence in the hall was absolute. Dean Sharma looked as if she wanted the ground to swallow her. Alistair Finch was staring at Michael with wide, horrified eyes. Michael continued, his voice still quiet, but each word landing like a hammer blow. "My family and I personally have donated conservatively over $200 million to Blackwood University over the past 2 decades. We did so with the understanding that this institution valued excellence, supported its students, and certainly didn't engage in the public humiliation of its most promising graduates over a pittance." He looked directly at Professor Evans, whose face had turned a sickly shade of grey. "So, Professor, while we're discussing outstanding accounts, perhaps you'd like to explain to me and to Dr. Hanson why her $7.50 is deemed more critical to this university's integrity than the Sterling family's continued multi-million-dollar patronage?" He didn't raise his voice, but the threat, the sheer weight of his financial power, hung unspoken in the air, more potent than any shout. The man they thought was a nobody's absent fiancé was, in fact, the university's single largest benefactor. Professor Evans stammered, utterly defeated. I was merely upholding policy, sir. Mr. Sterling." "Policy that lacks common sense and basic human decency is not policy, Professor. It's bureaucracy run rampant," Michael stated, his gaze unwavering. He then turned to Dean Sharma, his expression softening almost imperceptibly. "Dean Sharma, I trust you will ensure Dr. Hanson is immediately reinstated to her rightful place in this ceremony and receives the honors she has so clearly earned, and I expect a full, formal and public apology from Professor Evans to Dr. Hanson before this day is out." Dean Sharma, recovering her composure, nodded vigorously. "Absolutely, Mr. Sterling, immediately. Professor Evans, apologize to Dr. Hanson at once and then remove yourself from this stage." Evans, looking thoroughly cowed and humiliated himself, mumbled a barely audible apology towards Lena, then scurried off the stage, his academic robes flapping behind him, the piece of paper with the offending bylaw fluttering forgotten from his hand. The security guards, who had been frozen in place, quickly retreated. Michael then turned back to Lena, his eyes filled with warmth and pride. He gently took the diploma scroll from her trembling hands. "How you earned this, my love," he whispered, for her ears only. He then stepped back slightly, gesturing for Dean Sharma to proceed. Dean Sharma, beaming now, quickly performed the ceremonial hooding for Lena, her earlier annoyance replaced with effusive praise. As she placed the doctoral hood over Lena's shoulders, the auditorium, which had been holding its collective breath, erupted into thunderous applause, far louder and more heartfelt than for any previous graduate. Alistair Finch, who had witnessed the entire exchange, looked ashen-faced, his earlier smirk long gone, replaced by a look of dawning horror as he realized the potential implications of his own petty cruelty towards the fiancée of the university's most powerful patron. Lena, her eyes shining with unshed tears, but this time tears of relief and gratitude, finally allowed herself a small, radiant smile. She stood tall, no longer the isolated, unassuming figure, but Dr. Lena Hansen, a respected academic, supported and loved, her triumph now witnessed and celebrated by all. Michael Sterling stood discreetly to the side, his presence a quiet shield, his pride in Lena evident to anyone who looked his way. The simple woman had not only claimed her moment, but her billionaire fiancé had ensured it was unforgettable, in more ways than one. The remainder of the graduation ceremony proceeded, but the atmosphere had irrevocably changed. Every subsequent graduate received enthusiastic applause, the entire hall buoyed by the unexpected drama and the satisfying reversal of fortunes. Professor Evans was conspicuously absent from the faculty rows. Whispers about Michael Sterling's identity and his connection to Lena Hansen spread like wildfire through the audience and among the remaining graduates. Alistair Finch, in particular, spent the rest of the ceremony avoiding eye contact with anyone, his earlier arrogance replaced by a palpable sense of dread. After the ceremony concluded, as graduates and families spilled out into the sun-drenched quadrangle, Michael and Lena were immediately surrounded, though a respectful distance was maintained. Dean Sharma approached them, her apologies profuse and sincere. "Mr. Sterling, Dr. Hansen, I cannot express how deeply I regret the unfortunate incident. Professor Evans's actions were an embarrassment to this university, and I assure you they will be addressed at the highest level." Michael accepted her apology with a curt nod. "Ensure that such a display of petty vindictiveness, especially at the expense of a deserving student, never happens again, Dean. That will be sufficient." Lena, ever gracious, simply thanked the Dean for rectifying the situation. News of the incident and Michael Sterling's dramatic intervention spread rapidly. By evening it was the talk of the academic world, and even made some minor business news outlets, focusing on the rarely seen billionaire CEO making such a public stand. Professor Evans was suspended pending a disciplinary review, his academic career likely over. Alistair Finch, fearing repercussions, reportedly sent a deeply apologetic and terrified email to Lena, which she read with a sigh and then deleted without reply. She had more important things to focus on. Michael, true to his word, had indeed flown in specifically for her graduation, rearranging an international business summit to do so. "I wouldn't have missed this for the world," he told her later, as they shared a quiet dinner, far from the university crowds. "Seeing you on that stage, knowing everything you overcame to get there, that's my definition of a billion-dollar achievement." Lena smiled, her heart full. The simple black gown was now carefully stored away, but the doctoral hood and the memory of Michael's unwavering support were treasures she would keep forever. Her journey hadn't been easy, and even her moment of triumph had been threatened by pettiness, but in the end, love, resilience, and a little bit of unexpected firepower had ensured that the simple woman was not just recognized, but celebrated. The university moved quickly to manage the fallout. Professor Evans was officially censured by the University Senate and quietly offered early retirement, which he accepted. His reputation within academia was irrevocably tarnished. Blackwood University issued a formal public apology to Dr. Lena Hansen for the unacceptable and distressing incident during the commencement ceremony, though it tactfully omitted Michael Sterling's name at his explicit request to avoid further sensationalizing his involvement. They also announced a review of all administrative policies related to student financial obligations and graduation eligibility, ensuring such a trivial matter could never again derail a deserving student's celebration. The $7.50 fine became an infamous anecdote on campus, a cautionary tale about the perils of bureaucratic overreach and underestimating individuals. Lena and Michael, after a quiet celebration, returned to their life together. Lena accepted a prestigious postdoctoral research fellowship at a leading international institute, her work in theoretical physics quickly gaining recognition. Michael continued to lead Sterling Global Enterprises, his public appearances remaining rare, but his support for Lena's career unwavering. They married a few months later in a small private ceremony, attended only by close friends and family, far from the public eye. Lena wore a simple, elegant ivory dress of her own choosing, no labels prominent. The story of her graduation day, however, continued to inspire. It became a quiet legend, passed down among students, a reminder that true worth isn't always visible, that dignity deserves defense, and that sometimes the most unassuming individuals possess the most extraordinary allies. Lena never sought the spotlight, but her resilience, combined with Michael's powerful intervention, ensured her moment of triumph was not only achieved, but also served as a catalyst for positive change within the institution she had worked so hard to graduate from. The simple woman had indeed been kicked off the stage, but with her billionaire fiancé by her side, she had ultimately owned it. If this story about overcoming adversity and the power of unwavering support resonated with you, please hit that like button. Share it with friends who believe in quiet strength. Leave a comment with your thoughts on justice and unexpected champions, and subscribe for more tales where the underestimated rise above. Thank you for watching.